Hello everyone and welcome to my impressions video for the PC version of Eternal Strands, developed and published by Yellow Brick Games. Just a little house cleaning for you if you are looking for my coverage of games like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and Civilization 7, be sure to head over to my History and Games channel, History and Games, as going forward all history-based games will be covered exclusively on that channel. Thank you. And I apologize for this video being a little late. I've been waffling back and forth on whether to cover this game because while it has flashes of brilliance and a lot of potential, it definitely needs polish in places. And there are a couple of things that are holding this game back, so I wasn't sure if I should wait for an update or a patch before commenting on it. But then again, this is a busy year for video games, and people only have so much time and money to spend on games, so I thought I'd better go ahead and make this video. So, with all of that said, let's get into it. First, what is Eternal Strands? Well, it's an action RPG that's a little Shadow of the Colossus, a little Monster Hunter, a little Immortals Phoenix Rising, with just a pinch of Breath of the Wild, which all sounds good on paper. The story revolves around Bryn, a type of magic user known as a Weaver, who has joined up with other Weavers on a mission to explore the Enclave, a place where Weavers once gathered to do all sorts of nifty stuff with magic. That is, until an event known as the Surge happened and basically wiped out civilization. Only the Enclave was seemingly spared, and that's because the Weavers there threw up a magical barrier around it known as the Veil. Since the Surge unleashed a series of magical catastrophes, people blamed Weavers for the collapse of civilization and have shunned them ever since, which is why Bryn and her fellow explorers have decided to breach the Veil and uncover the mysteries of the Enclave. They hope to learn more about the disastrous event that took place over 50 years ago, and while gathering powerful artifacts, maybe see how they can set things to right. It's up to Bryn to take the lead on this expedition, while the rest of her comrades hang back at base camp and offer assistance by helping Bryn craft and upgrade weapons and armor, unlock new spells, improve the campsite, etc., etc. Between expeditions, Bryn will also have the opportunity to get to know her fellow Weavers better via a series of conversations that reveal more about their personalities. All in all, it's pretty standard RPG stuff. So, how do I feel about it? It's pretty mixed. And I want to start with exploration and combat because this is the crux of the game. Eternal Strands is a semi-open world, at least at the start. Although Bryn can wander in different directions, in the first hours of the game, she's hemmed in by a lot of magical barriers and can only follow so many paths due to a starting stamina meter that keeps her grounded. So if you're expecting the crazy freedom of Breath of the Wild, don't expect to immediately make a beeline for Calamity Ganon here. Still, there's some nice verticality sprinkled into the different environments that make Eternal Strands feel a little more three-dimensional, and the visuals, which, while a bit bland, also have the whimsical color and style of Immortals Phoenix Rising, which isn't bad. Now, in order to open up the world and progress through the Enclave, Bryn will have to collect tons of resources, which come in the form of either enemy drops, we'll get to that, or hacking and slashing at random objects like bushes and wooden crates. This can be sort of fun, although since Bryn is weak in the beginning, it feels like it takes longer than it should to tear through a box. Once the heroic Weaver has enough resources, she can repair teleportation gates, return to camp to craft and upgrade weapons and armor, there's some good customization here, and even use resources to upgrade the camp itself, which in turn will allow Bryn to unlock new Weaver spells and abilities. The problem with this resource collecting loop is that the developer decided to add a kind of roguelike mechanic to it that just doesn't work. You see, if you fall in battle, you'll be yanked back to base camp, and in the process, you'll lose most of your resources. Although you can increase Bryn's carrying capacity by leveling up so that Bryn doesn't lose quite as many valuables, the fact that this mechanic exists at all in a game that's not designed to be part of the rogue genre is annoying, especially if you're struggling against multiple hard-hitting enemies. Speaking of which, let's talk about combat, which is both the funnest part of Eternal Strands and the most frustrating. Bryn has two types of combat style at her disposal. This gives her the ability to attack at close range or from afar, and for the most part, it works. Although the lock-on system feels wonky at times and switching weapons is slightly cumbersome. You have to open up a weapon ring and choose an item instead of just being able to quickly cycle through them at the tap of a button. It's a small disruption, but it can really throw off Breen's rhythm during a fight. Then there's magic itself, and this is where things get interesting. Instead of flinging fireballs and chain lightning at enemies, Bryn is forced to think a little more strategically. She starts with two powers. The first is a telekinesis spell that lets her pick up objects or enemies and fling them into something or off of something. The second is an ice wall ability that can cool walls of fire, freeze enemies in place, or hem them in to make it easier for Bryn to finish them off. And as soon as she starts improving her base camp, Bryn will unlock even more spells that can be woven together to do some serious damage. I like the concept of this. Rather than just mindlessly blasting foes out of her way, Bryn has to use the environment around her in order to be effective with her magic. In short, Bryn has to fight smarter rather than harder, and this is especially true when confronting giant creatures known as arcs. These magical colossi have several weak points that need to be exploited. Hey, just like in Shadow of the Colossus. And although I only took on one of these during the demo, these encounters promise to be both challenging and fun. Using magic and abilities strategically instead of mindlessly is something refreshingly different, and I want to praise Yellow Brick Games for thinking outside the box. Unfortunately, while it's a great idea, in reality, the magic mechanic actually drags the action down, and that's because it needs a lot of polish. Again, when spells work, they work really well and make you feel smart. But the problem is they don't work consistently. The lock-on mechanic is clumsy. Spells, at least early on in the game, feel kind of weak, and there's no visual trajectory, so it's not always clear or easy to guide spells to where you want them to go. And because of this, fighting mobs of enemies was incredibly frustrating for me. Bryn missed half the time, allowing enemies to quickly gain up on her. More than once, I actually had to retreat against even normal grunts. And even then, that was hard because enemies will chase you for a surprisingly long time. And if you run into other enemies along the way, Bryn is in some serious trouble. Now, the good news is the combat can be patched and fights can be balanced. The bad news is the story's pacing can't be fixed. I'm only a few hours in so far, but the story is so boring. Since a major catastrophe has already happened, it feels like there's no urgency to Breen's mission. There's nothing really on the line. It doesn't help that Breen and her companions are equally dull. They all seem nice, I guess, but none of them are remarkable. I can't even remember their names, which isn't a good sign considering I haven't played a Mass Effect game in years, but I still remember Garrus, Tali, Liara, Thane, Miranda, Boo, and even Joker. I also remember the names of almost every single cast member of Fire Emblem Three Houses. Shout out to my Blue Lions, they're the best. Even the character portraits in this game are bland. They're rendered in 2D, which feels jarring compared to the 3D models I'm looking at while characters are talking. And you know what? It just occurred to me that I can't remember a single tune from the game. The music and sound design are fine, I know that, but they also go into the forgettable pile. The demo is pretty long, and I'm only a few hours into this game, but so far I've been so bored by the story and its lack of urgency, and its lack of interesting characters, that it's taken me several tries just to get past the first area in the game. And that's really too bad, because I can see so much potential in this game. There are some great ideas here. The magic mechanic offers a different approach to your typical RPG spellcasting. Bryn's group could surprise me with a few story-related plot twists later on, but right now, Eternal Strands is just missing the polish and oomph needed to take it from being a pretty good game to a great game. Maybe when it's patched or updated, I'll give it another chance, but unless you already have Game Pass, I would hold off for now. The game has potential, but it's just not there yet. Thanks so much for watching, guys. See you later.